Don't Worry Darling is a psychological thriller that asks some really interesting, thought-provoking questions about society, genders, is Harry Styles a good actor or not? But one thing this film asks that I just couldn't get out of my head for the entire runtime is, what would happen if you had a bunch of eggs? You're making some delicious bacon and eggs, or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you're making the eggs with. But you've got an egg, and you look at the egg, but then you crush the egg, and there's no yolk. No yolk starts dripping down your hand. You just crush an eggshell, and it's empty inside. And at first I'm like, ooh, a metaphor or whatever. But then, no, it wasn't a dream or anything like that. She just continues to go about her day. And I just kept sitting there being like, if I was just minding my business, cooking eggs or bacon or whatever, maybe a cake, and I crushed the egg, something in my brain was like, I don't think there's any yolk in this. I'm going to test it out. Bam! Crush! No yolk. What would I do in this situation? You know what I wouldn't do? I wouldn't not tell anyone. I wouldn't just go about my day. She cracks a couple more eggs, just crash, crash, crash. And then she's like, I guess that's just what happens with eggs sometimes. Sometimes they don't come with yolk inside. No, they always do. Sometimes a chicken is in there too, but mostly yolk. If I was in this situation, I wouldn't just not tell anyone and just go about my day. I would be telling everybody. That's all I say. That would be the only thing you could get me to talk about until it was solved, until someone explained to me the scientific reason why that and how that could happen. I'd be going to the manufacturer, I'd be telling every single person on the street, I'd be calling all my friends, I'd be calling my mum, I'd be calling everybody. Every single person at work would now know me as the guy who crushed an egg and there wasn't yolk inside. And he can't seem to get over it. It's been 3 years, but he can't seem to get over it. I don't understand what Florence Pugh's character was doing, what she was thinking. Just crushing eggs and then being like, I guess that's just the way of this world. Spoilers. There's a reason, but she doesn't immediately investigate and go, that's the last straw. That's the first and last straw. So Don't Worry Darling has been getting quite a mixed reception. That's a polite way to put it, that's for sure. So I had zero expectations going in, and you know what? I really liked it. For the most part, I enjoyed 2/3 of it quite a lot. I thought it was a pretty interesting, thought-provoking kind of film. I kind of felt like I knew what was happening kind of almost from the get-go, but I was still kind of interested in how it was playing out. It was doing a lot of little fun things. Florence Pugh's acting is just so good. She's so good. She carries the whole film. You're going to be seeing lots of those memes where you're reading on the internet and you're like, oh my God, oh no, Florence Pugh, she's in hospital. What happened? And then you keep reading, you're like, she's in hospital for sore shoulders because she was carrying the entire film on her shoulders. They get me every time! But you're going to be seeing that meme because she carried the film on her shoulders. She's fantastic. The setting and design and like the location, the feel of the movie is really, really good. It's rich and vibrant and beautiful. And it's kind of so beautiful and so gorgeous and so colorful. It just kind of feels off and off-putting and in a kind of weird, surreal way. We're in this little idyllic town and there's desert all around it. And it's a really beautiful, intense setting. Like, I don't know, I loved the imagery of all the men being like, it's 1950s, whoop-a-da-bo, and all the ladies are like, goodbye, men, and they're all driving in their 1950s cars. And then they just leave the suburban kind of idyllic 1950s area and then just boom, into the desert. And we never see past that desert. And I'm just kind of like, where are they going? What are they doing at their jobs? And there was just so many questions. So many things I wanted to answer, and I was so fascinated and so curious, and I was like, I have an idea of like the basic idea of what is going on, which turns out to be mostly true, but when it gets to kind of the big twist at the end and the third act kind of reveal, I feel like that's where the film kind of lost me a little bit, and I suddenly started having more questions, and I was hoping we were going to get the answers, but then the film ends on such an odd just kind of moment where you're like, wait, there should be 25 minutes left. What do you mean we're ending it here? I don't... There are so many more interesting things that I want discussed and like kind of dissected, and there are so many other characters that you haven't like fully fleshed out properly, and we focus so heavily on Florence Pugh, and she does such a good job, but every other side character, even like the main side characters, are just thrown to the side, and we get maybe one scene each where they kind of have half explanations of who they are as people, but there's so much mystery. I want the mystery at the end to be satisfying, whereas I don't think it is. So spoilers, it's The Matrix. It's just The Matrix, which is really, really weird. And like, it kind of threw me. Because what I thought was happening was essentially what was happening, where all the men like know what's going on and they're all in on it, and all the women have been brainwashed in some way and they're all there. And I did kind of think that maybe like Chris Pine's wife would not be brainwashed. It turned out one of the other characters was not brainwashed, Olivia Wilde's character, and that was another really interesting character. I'm like, oh my god, I want to hear more about that. Oh no, we're literally driving cars as fast as we can to the end of the movie. Let's get out of Dodge and let's not develop anyone beyond a surface level. Okay, sure. I mean, don't do that, but sure. I think the idea that they are in a matrix just feels a bit kind of like, I don't know, I was just kind of like, oh, so all the weird things, they're like glitches in the matrix, like it's all a computer program. But then there are so many different moments where I'm like, but why would this happen if it's like a computer program? Why would this happen if it's a computer program? If they were all actually living, breathing there in the flesh, I feel like different moments and scenes would make sense. Like they're medicating some of the girls who are like glitching and like being all like, oh, I'm Neo in this Matrix movie. And so they're like giving them pills and stuff. But why do any of that? Why? That would be happening in the real world when they're like lying down on the table with the things in their heads. It didn't make sense to me. Like it just felt very like, I feel like so many little parts of it don't make sense. There's like a red plane that keeps appearing when someone disappears into the desert. I don't understand that at all. I kept trying to like piece together what kind of metaphor that must be, or it's just a glitch in the Matrix. But it's just like, but why a red plane? Why does the little boy have one when the first girl goes? And why is there one in the sky that makes Florence Pugh's character leave the first time? It's all just a bit like, I don't understand. I just thought that like, oh no, a plane went over their weird cult little area and she happened to see it. Like, you know, oh, a coincidence. But yes, that's how things happen. Coincidences sometimes. I'm totally fine with that. That's how you, what was that phrase? You can get yourself into a problem via coincidence, just not out of it. So I was happy for that. But if it's in the Matrix, what the hell was the deal with the plane? Another thing, Chris Pine's character, he's amazing as well. He's so good. I wish he got more than 2 scenes. But there's a scene where he gets his only second scene where he's just like, oh yeah, Alice. I've been like, oh, Alice. Alice in Wonderland. It's the Matrix! It's all... I probably should have realized that earlier. I'm now realizing. So Chris Pine's character is another one that kind of like really fascinated and intrigued me through the whole film. He's such a fantastic actor. He's doing an amazing performance where he's sexy, charming, awesome. But the whole time you're like, well, I know because he's the leader. He's like the cult leader. Something's going to be wrong with him. And yes, there's something wrong with him. But who is he outside of the Matrix? Like, if that's not him, you know, in the flesh, like, what is he like outside of the Matrix in the real world? Like, is he that rich, successful guy he's kind of portraying? Or is he, like, kind of the most, like, cliche version of an incel? Because he's, like, the god of incels in this. Or, like, the cult leader of all the incel boys that are running around in their incel Matrix universe or whatever. So I was just kind of like, oh, I'd just like to see at least one scene outside of the world to see, like, what's going on. Are they all together in like an apartment building, all strapped down to chairs? Because like Florence Pugh escapes at the end. Is she going to interact with him? Oh no, wait, he died. Yeah, and he died? Why did he die? His wife kills her and she's like, you're a stupid man. And now I'm in charge. Now it's my time to reign. What does she mean by that? Like, is she now going to run the Victory Project? Is she going to be like queen of the incels now? Or like, I don't know. Just too many questions. I don't feel like any of it makes any sense. They didn't flesh out any of these characters. Did she know? Was she like Olivia Wilde's character? And did she know that she was in a thing? And she's like, oh, shit's going crazy. I'm just going to stab him. Is he like not good at doing what, like, were they in it together? But she's like, actually, he's doing it wrong. I can do it now. That's why I'm in control now. Or is she just in control because she's out of the Matrix now and she's like Neo. She's like, I'm in control now. I stopped the bullets. It's so close to being really, really good. I had so much fun. And I'd heard that like the ending was bad and people just hate the whole film. I heard the ending wasn't great. And the whole time I'm like, this is awesome. I'm actually really enjoying this. Like, so awesome. But like, when you think something's going to be like, expectations are funny. When you think something's going to be like dreadful, awful, like everyone's like, don't worry, darling. More like, worry, darling, you know, or whatever. That'll probably be somewhere in my thumbnail, some kind of worry joke. Although I liked it, so I guess I can't do that. But did I? Because the more I think about it, the more it kind of frustrates me how the third act kind of falls apart. But there's so many questions, and there's so many answers I wanted answered, and I don't think you need to answer all like questions in a film. But I think if I'm left with so many where I'm like, oh, but the potential of saying this, or just, you know, the end of the movie being like, I've escaped the Matrix. Yes! Screw those incel men. Screw Harry Styles. But how is she escaping? Isn't she tied down with her eyes in like a Matrixy thing? Won't there just be like a bunch of incel men standing around like ready to like just shoot her in the face or whatever? I don't know. Like, where are they in the real world? Like, just so little is explained. I felt like I wasn't left with any emotional, like, oh, Florence Pugh, she got out of here. It ended, I just went, what? Like, it ends, and then it goes, don't worry, darling. And I'm like, I'm starting to really worry, because isn't she just strapped in a bed, about to get shot by a bunch of incel tech guys or whatever? I mean, I don't even know. Maybe she's just in her own bed. I don't understand. Like, how long have they been in there? Like, is someone, like, holding, like, a bucket for her to poo and pee? Or is that just not happening anymore? Who's feeding her? What? Oh my God. I'm now starting to really realize how many questions I have. You know what? I don't actually think I want to know the answers to some of these questions. Yeah. She's probably connected with some tubes or something. Food tube, poo tube. It's not really relevant, I suppose. That's probably why I didn't end the movie with her being like, gotta get this food tube out of my mouth and then this poo tube out of my bum. In the end, this kind of feels like a pretty good Black Mirror episode, but not one of the great ones. Like, it reminds me of a Black Mirror episode where it ends and I go, oh, Black Mirror, oh, it's so good. And then I start thinking about it a bit more, and then I'm like, wait, but how does that mean that and that? And then I'm like, I guess just shut up and don't think about it. Whereas there are so many great Black Mirror episodes where there's one that literally reminds me exactly of this, and it kind of feels like, the writers of this film just watched that episode. I don't even want to say what it is, because if you haven't seen it, you should watch it, and it's such a fantastic episode of Black Mirror. But it has essentially the same kind of premise and the same idea. But then at the end of the film, the way it kind of wraps up at the end, it's horrifying, but satisfying and emotionally, like, there's a big, like, fist pump, like, they got out of it! Kind of! Ugh. And it's really powerful. And might even be the best Black Mirror episode. Whereas this didn't leave me with any of that. I feel like the twist kind of took away from a lot of what I thought I was watching as well. Like, I was kind of like, oh, I thought I was watching flesh and body people doing things. Now it's all the Matrix. I'm just like left questioning why so many little different things happen. There are a couple things where I'm like, oh yeah, the eggs. I guess the code was like, oh, we forgot to put yolk in. And there's like some nerd being like, get the yolk back in the egg. And like there's bits where like, oh, my life, I feel like I'm washing windows, but I don't want to be. And like my life's closing in on itself. And literally the walls of the house are closing in on itself. And there's some stuff like that where it's like, I'm happy for that just to be like, I don't know, in her mind, where it's like, she's psychologically damaged, so that's happening. Whereas it's just like, I guess it was a tech guy, and the tech's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that with the wall. Get the wall back in place. And the wall's crashing because they're in the internet or whatever. One thought I did have as well is there's a moment in the film where it's like, twist reveal, Harry Styles is a douchebag incel, and he's kidnapped his girlfriend, and he's put her in the Matrix. And they give Harry Styles like this long, greasy hair. He's got a bit of like beard and some acne and stuff. He's all like, just like a loser. I think this film could have been elevated even higher with Jake Gyllenhaal. I feel like this is a Jake Gyllenhaal, like it's the perfect movie for him, because he can be so sexy, so charismatic, the leading man, and he rocks up 1950s looking hair, just being all charming and sexy, and then the sleaze, the Nightcrawler Gyllenhaal creeps out, and he's all like, rah, 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 and does his creepy Jake Gyllenhaal thing. He's just so good at both of them. And I mean, not to throw shade on Harry Styles, who's not even an actor, he's just a fantastic pop singer who was in Dunkirk, I think, maybe? Yeah, he was in Dunkirk, yeah. But is that his only other film role? I've not seen him in anything else. Whereas Jake Gyllenhaal is like one of the best actors ever. He's so amazing. And if he was then revealed to be this dirty, incel, gross guy, and he's kidnapped his girlfriend and all these things, I think that twist would have worked a lot more. You would have suddenly been like, oh God, how could I love this guy? This sexy, charming Jake Gyllenhaal. Oh, he's so clearly slimy and dirty. And I feel like if you give a couple more scenes in the real world to flesh it out where it doesn't feel so kind of poorly written and very like, just feels very clunky and like badly, like just, I don't know. He's like, oh, why are you a doctor for 13 hours a day? Have sex with me. And she's like, I'm sleepy now. And it just felt a bit like, oh, so heavy handed, so on the nose. So just like, oh, like very rushed. Just let some scenes play out and let Jake Gyllenhaal's acting do the talking. Because I think a lot of this film is Florence Pugh's acting and her eyes reacting to scenes and circumstances, doing the heavy lifting of the entire film. So the script doesn't have to be as tight at times because she's just so phenomenal. I definitely think there's a way they could have crafted this film where the first 90 minutes is condensed into like 45, 50 minutes, and the last 20, 30 minutes extend that for another like 40, 50 minutes. And that way we can really kind of sit in the big twist that it is The Matrix, and you can flesh out all these characters. Who is Chris Pine's character on the outside? Give me more of Jake Gyllenhaal. Cast Jake Gyllenhaal. Don't put Harry Styles in this movie. Like, just, I don't know. There are so many different ways you can kind of craft this into a really, really great movie. Because I do think this film is really close to being something really exciting and powerful and like thought-provoking, and it makes you go like, oh. Whereas this kind of, it ended and I went, oh yeah, all the men bad, all the incel men bad. Oh, and it's The Matrix. Okay. And it doesn't feel like it has time to kind of develop and kind of fester in these, stew in these ideas to make it more than just kind of the surface level film that it kind of is in the end. And that's kind of disappointing because, as I said at the start, it's a beautiful looking movie. The whole idyllic 1950s setting is gorgeous, but kind of horrifying and scary. And then that desert scape outside, like there are so many brilliant visuals. For it to all kind of fall apart at the end, really, really disappointed me. Overall, don't worry, darling. Maybe worry a little bit, but everyone shouldn't worry so much because it's not as bad as people say, but it's not great either. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I would love to know what everyone thought of it. Don't worry, darling.